2026 is a pretty big year for mobile. Mobile games in fact getting bigger, and when developers want to go big, they make them offline. In fact, the biggest mobile games are with a single player or play offline. Hello friends, welcome back. This is Mobile. Here's 2026 finest free-to-play offline new games for Android and iOS. So first things first, this in fact came up after almost a year since its PC port. It's now sitting on Android and iOS with a free demo, and we're glad to say that Tiny Bookshop is just such a nice game to just sort of wind down after a long day of work. So look, it sounds almost too simple at first on paper, which is you sell books, decorate your shop, repeat the same daily routine, but at the same time that is legitimately why it works. Every day goes by pretty quick in fact, so it never feels dull or boring or dragging. You decide what books to stock depending on demand, where to set up shop, and even the side characters start growing on you over time. Look, if you're into cozy games that don't rush you or throw 100 different systems at your face, just go for it. Number 2, this one's a nostalgia hit, so I would say if you grow up with arcade games, this might hit the right spot. Otherwise, it could be a sort of a hit or miss. See, Metal Slug Rush basically takes everything that made the series iconic and it sort of reshapes it into a roguelike. Like, it's a lot like Vampire Survivors, and just look at how successful that formula is right now. It actually worked better than expected. You're mowing down different types of soldiers, pirates, Mars people, bosses, all that while grabbing upgrades, building better runs and combinations through each different play. It has a pixel art as well, a classic announcers there, so it is the same Metal Slug, it's just a fresh perspective. This, on another hand, is what happens when you throw Vigilance and football together, coming out as just pure arcade grind. For those of you who missed it, Cars Royale takes the old one more match feeling and turns it into a full-on vehicle fighting arena where every hit can change a win to a lose very quickly. The game's not about driving fast, it's just about timing your rockets, your weapons, smashing balls, defending your side, and pulling off these ridiculous last second plays because every other good player actually does. It's a pretty simple idea, instant fun, and the kind of game that just makes you say, fine, I'll do one more round, way too many times. It's a free game as well. Coming up behind that, we've got this new game called Los. I would say low-key just a kind of horror game that reminds you why atmosphere always beat jump scares. The moment you start in this manor setting thing, you get that something feels wrong, not because anything is chasing you, but just because the house itself is made in the right way. I'm gonna be honest, I love horror games that they actually make you curious before they make you scared, and Los absolutely does that. You're not just escaping a haunted house or something, you're trying to piece together this 200-year-old mystery. It's the kind of game that actually makes you stop for a second, look around, and actually think about what you want to do next. Originally a $5 PC game that's been out for over a month now, number 5 we've got the famous Duriano, which is now actually sitting on the Play Store thanks to the good developers for free. It has a controller support, it plays offline, it is a bullet hell with a pretty smooth gameplay, a very decent variety and just a solid art to go with. And it's a roguelike, you've got to stay alive as long as possible, move around quick, collect a bunch of coins every different run from other fallen enemies before time runs out. The little time pressure actually adds a pretty good layer of intensity, but the game is in its current state a tiny little bit rough, so it could use a bit more polish. Definitely worth a try, that doesn't take away anything from it. It's a free game, highly recommend it. Down to number 6, we've got Lumberjack Sim, and it's not the one we mentioned, for the past couple of weeks, but something of a sort of updated and almost HD version of the original game. So yeah, right off the bat, it's one of those games that completely caught us off guard. It looks like another sim game. Once you start chopping your first tree, you realize it's actually trying to simulate the whole process. You don't just tap a button, watch a tree disappear. You make the cuts yourself, trim the branches, repair old pickups on top, and will eventually build a real business. This one is definitely easy to get hooked on. This, on the other hand, is definitely not your average cleaning simulator because, first of all, Am Janitor over here is coming from the same team who brought the game I'm Monkey, I'm Taxi, I'm Bird, meaning it sort of starts off with you mopping floors and toilets after a nightclub party. It's all fun and game until guests come around and just make trouble. Like 1 minute you're doing your job, next you're running with a flamethrower or even a freeze gun just to banish these people. Pretty goofy game. It's got a lot of physics-based stuff, doesn't take itself seriously for a second. If games like Goat Simulator sort of make you laugh, this is exactly that kind of humor you'll probably enjoy as well. Sitting at the number 8, we've got probably the most downloaded game of the month when it comes to offline games. In fact, one of the finest sim games ever made to come around here, the game Crime Scene Evidence Collector. And it is by definition not a low effort sim game, and personally I ended up being obsessed with the game. It's a pretty simple concept, but the attention to detail, the gameplay creates that just one more crave very well. Suffice it to say, if you enjoy sim games that turn ordinary jobs into some oddly addictive daily routines, go for this game. Going down to number 9, we've got Busmasters India Sim. Believe it or not, this game's actually downloaded nearly 5 million times in just a couple of weeks, and it's not because it's an Indian game, it's just actually good. It's built around a very specific idea, which is you're driving these inner city buses to literally this rhythm of India, beeping on the clock. Probably like the Dark Souls equivalent of bus simulation games when it comes to difficulty. It's also a very polished game and the visuals do pop. It's actually one of the ground driving sim games that is at the same time focusing on realism, progression, mobile gameplay, and just capturing the everyday feel of a bus driver, but in a good way. It plays offline, it's about 1.5 gigabytes in total. So sitting at number 10, we've got Highway Moto Rush. I'd even argue it's the kind of game you sort of go in without any expectations for just a few minutes and end up losing half a day because it's just great. It's not an open world game, you can see it's a sort of a running game. There's no complicated progression system, no unnecessary systems of fluff. It's just you pick a motorcycle and a traffic to move like on the opposite direction. In fact, the first person view does a surprisingly good job of selling the speed, especially when you're squeezing through tiny little gaps between different cars to make it work. What I personally actually like most about the game is that it knows exactly when it wants to be. It's just motorcycle racing that really scratches that specific itch without overcomplicating nothing.
They're the greaser.
If you were lucky enough to play this game back then, I would say you've had the time of your life. If not, it's still not late. Bully the HD Anniversary Edition's almost rocks are at its peak. The mobile port nails controls, controller definitely comes in handy, the game is graphically polished, voice acting's great, cloud save's intact, it's a real package. On another hand, number 12, we've got Bookshop Sim 2. And this is actually the kind of sequel that looks at the first game and says, what if we just made everything bigger and better? It's literally that. The game is part business sim, part life sim, part comedy adventure, so if you've ever wanted a restaurant management game with just more chaos than usual, this is an easy recommendation. At its core, you're going to be running a backstore restaurant, preparing, cooking meals, serving, and it's all in this little town that really feels alive. Packed with a lot of characters, side activities, mini games, and like an entire game worth of just charm. If you're a fan of those sort of creepy psychological horror games where you constantly question whether you're losing your mind or not, well, Redwood Falls 1984 got your name written all over it. It's a pretty simple setup. Your car breaks down in this rural Oregon during 1984, where you stumble into a quiet town called Redwood Falls, looking for help and almost immediately realize something is not right. Pretty creepy, it is a little mysterious. Most of the horror actually comes from the atmosphere. So if weird psychological horror games is your thing, this definitely worth checking out. At number 14, we've got Beat Hazard Arcade, and it's one of those games that doesn't get old. It's, you could say, a timeless game because the soundtrack is the gameplay. It's a musical game and a bullet hell where every song obviously creates a different battle, enemy waves coming at you, and weapon powers that all react to the beat itself. It's been a fan favorite for years on PC and consoles as well, and the mobile version, for those of you who missed it, captures the same addictive formula surprisingly well, and it works with the controller too. So look, if you've never played it before, just imagine a twin-stick shooter where your favorite playlist becomes a level. Like, it's almost unlike any other game you played on mobile. Pretty tiny game with a surprisingly brutal attitude. Number 15, we've got Sky Hill. Definitely inspired by the cult classics, aiming survival fancier. The setup is actually pretty simple. You're trapped at the top of a massive hotel after an apocalypse, and every floor between you and freedom is packed with these monsters, starvation, and a lot of bad decisions that you're gonna learn later. What makes Sky Hill actually good is that constant risk versus reward tension, where do you spend your last resource crafting a gear or save them for food? The graphics may show their age, of course, but the survival loop still holds up incredibly well. If you enjoy roguelike games that are fresh, it's definitely worth a shot. The same folks who made the Lumberjack sim, they've also made Gold Rush Miner, and I'll argue it's mainly for folks who watched gold mining shows and thought to themselves, well, ain't this fun? And it's just whatever you liked about that and turn it into a video game. And it's actually pretty good. You start with just a metal detector and just a shovel, then you gotta work your way through every step of the process yourself. Digging, washing dirt, sorting the ore, smelting full into bars, crafting jewelry, even repairing tractors and excavators. So, it's a real addictive game because you're doing everything yourself. Same problem with Lumberjack Sim, it's pretty easy to get hooked on. I wouldn't call this a perfect game by any means, but it's definitely worth a download and at least trying it. Katori kinda came our way earlier this week and it's quite enjoyable. It's playable offline and online. Obviously online makes it more fun because you're fighting against real players, but still legit against AI is pretty fun. Just the same. I actually included in the list because these developers seem to have really put the back into it. The duels are difficult enough to keep it going wet, combat's actually quick, landing on the right hit feels great. Also between fights you get to tweak your samurai skin and skills for a better run. The game's early, it's a little rough around the edges, but there's definitely a job done right. It is on Android right now, set to be coming to iOS soon. And last but not least, for those of you who do like innovative, creative sort of games, we've got La Madriguera, which is a puzzle game that's sort of hard to bear, but made entirely with that acknowledgement. So it's a pretty stupid game in nature, but it's also made stupid in the best way possible. You're this lazy bear stuck in an armchair, refusing to get up for whatever reason, and through the entire game you stretch this ridiculous extra long fork across the room, grabbing, pushing, dragging objects just to solve puzzles and one awkward move all at a time. Pretty funny game, low pressure, weirdly satisfying when your lazy genius strategy actually works. It's also playable offline.